great pleasure to introduce my teacher and mentor, Reverend Judy Andersen. After a long hiatus, we welcome her back to this podium.
Well, thank you. It is such a joy to be able to be back here.
I see you.
I see you. And back here, but not quite moving as easily as I used to do, but that's okay. My body says it's time to do a little renewing. And if I live what I believe, I'll be in better shape next week and the week after that. But let's get started with a little bit of affirmative prayer. So please join me in knowing the good of this day, this hour, this moment. Because every moment is a God-filled moment. Each moment, a chance to be, to see, to do, to hug, to love. Today, each moment can be a transformative moment as we choose to experience that as our truth. I make that choice for myself. I invite you to make it too. We release these words knowing they are acted upon to the level of our acceptance, to the level of our belief. And so it is. And so today we're talking about awakening. And it's the first thought that came into my head when I saw the title was from a letter from Paul to the Ephesians. If you don't know who the Ephesians are, there's a place in Turkey called Ephesus. And I was fortunate enough to visit that place when I was on a Mediterranean cruise a few years back, when I could be on my feet for 6 hours a day. But Ephesus is a place where Paul actually went and talked. They had a big amphitheater made out of rock. You think sitting in our chairs is hard sometimes. Imagine sitting on rock for a couple hours. But Paul spoke there. And it is said that that is where the Apostle John took Mary, the mother of Jesus, to live out her life after the crucifixion for her to be saved. And I have to tell you something. I get goosebumps when I remember it. Literally, I'm breaking out in goosebumps. There is an atmosphere there. And everybody I have ever talked to who has been there has felt the same. There is something special about that place. But anyway, in his letter that Paul wrote to these people of Ephesus, he said, and here, I know this in my head now, let the words come out of my mouth, please. Awake, thou that sleepest. And it went on to say a little bit more about leaving death and awake. And what did he mean by it? And to me, I'm going to get into some of my personal stuff here because it serves as a really good example. Back on February 14, we took my husband, Norris, to the hospital because he was suffering from a lot of pain and back problems, whatever, besides being 88 years old. But we took him in there, and he was in hospital, from February 14 to July 4, when he graduated to going to Bethany Continuing Care, and he is improving. But something happened to me during that time, and I will call it being frozen, because I was in this space of not knowing what was happening, not knowing what would happen, not knowing what I should do or could do. So it was as though Judy, the person, was put in a freezer. And I kind of stayed there. I had back problems. Of course, I had to mirror what Norris was going through. So I had a couple little fractures and little bones down at the bottom of my back, and that kept me from leaving the house for a period of 3 weeks. I could barely move, to be honest. So I was locked up there. Thank goodness Norris's son David would go to the hospital and put through a phone call so Norris and I could talk every day. But then I started coming out from that. But still, in the way I was functioning and what I was doing, I was frozen. I was not awake. So this awakening thing, it's very interesting. When I started working on this talk, things started changing in me. And in the last 2 days, I accomplished more, got more things done than I think I had done in the last few months. In terms of basic housework, and I hurt a little bit when I'm doing things, but I bought these nice labor-saving devices, and I am awake again. So to me, this title is so meaningful, Awake Thou That Sleepest. And for me, it felt more as though I had been frozen in time. And now Norris Blossom is doing better, so much better, and so am I. And I love being here and being able to talk about it, but it gives me the chance to ask you, is there an area in your life where you are frozen, where you are stagnant and not moving forward? And it might be because of the stubborn belief we have in aging. Could be a stubborn belief in that, well, I'm not good enough to write a book. I'm not good enough to write a song. I'm not good enough to open my mouth and sing. Where are you stuck? Is there something in your life that isn't moving? That's what this whole month is all about, is awakening, taking a look at ourselves. And as we're closing in on September, which to me is always a month of renewal, kids back in school, weather getting a little cooler, it's a time, it's another time like New Year's, when we can awake to possibilities and reach a little, stretch a little, awaken to new possibilities. Can I go to the pool and go swimming 2 or 3 times a week? That might help this arthritic back. Can I teach a class again? I've been pretty inactive here at the center for the last few months, but yes, I've committed to starting a new class at the end of September. A 10-week course called From Whence We Came that goes into the history of the New Thought movement. And it's a wonderful course. It's interesting if you love the history. One of my favorite people that's covered in it is Emma Curtis Hopkins, who was called the teacher of teachers. She was Ernest Holmes' teacher. And one of the lines I always remember from her book is, "My good is my God is my good." It's such a simple little phrase, isn't it? But if we can awaken even to that one phrase, my God is my good is my God. I'm sorry, but I need a tissue. But anyway, we can awaken, and we can do some of the things that we thought we couldn't. Do you remember what it was like when you were a child and nobody told you you couldn't sing or you couldn't dance? You're all familiar with the phrase, dance as though nobody's watching. Well, add, sing as though nobody was listening. You know, Norris and I got in the habit of watching Lawrence Welk on Saturday nights. And especially now, Norris is in Bethany and I'm still in the house. I sing. And my whole life has been, you can't carry a tune. But that's all right. I sing along with Lawrence Welk. Old songs, that's fine. It youthens me to go back to the 60s and 70s. But, so sing, dance. Remember what it was like to jump in puddles and to play hopscotch and to skip rope. Remember what it felt like to have that level of energy. And if we can remember well enough what it felt like to have that kind of energy, then we can recapture some of it. I've talked about this before, but there was a study done in one of the big U.S. universities, taking a group of men in their, I forget if they were in their 50s, I think, and they put them in an environment where they saw newspapers from the years when they were in their 20s. And the music that was played was the music they had heard in their 20s. And the food, whatever. They put them in this setting. And by the time they finished about, I think it was 6 weeks of that, all their physiology had changed. Their hearts and their muscles and their lungs, everything had youthened. So if they could do that in the university, surely we can accomplish some of that at home. If we sing as though nobody's listening and dance as though nobody's watching, and if we jump in the mud puddles and roll in the grass. I'm looking at Audrey Payton and remembering the day we took some of her grandchildren out for a walk, and we all got down on the side of a little hill and rolled over and over down in the grass. And this was back in the mid-1990s, so not that long ago, really. I was just a young thing of 65 or so at then. But we rolled in the grass. And there's something something I read that we should all walk barefoot in the grass every day, that it would do wonders for us. You remember that, Audrey? And we've sang to the kids, roll over, roll over. But those are youthening things. And can we awaken to those feelings? One of my best awakening memories is downhill skiing at Sunshine on a sunny day and beautiful snow, and zipping back and forth, feeling like my body was in tune with the universe. My muscles were wonderful. Everything was in harmony. If we can bring back some of those memories, we can change our bodies. We can change our minds too, to be more accepting of a greater good. Awake, thou that sleepest. You've been having a slow dream. It's time to step up the pace and be fully aware and awake. That's what we want. And it doesn't matter if we're 23 or 93 or 83. It doesn't matter. Every day can make a difference. But we need to get out there and do it. Get a coloring book and color outside the lines. Jump in the puddle. Here I'm looking at Lena, and with her beautiful little girl, she gets a chance to do these things with her. And she stays young because of it, right? Having that little girl in your life is help keeping you in your 20s. Yeah. Anyway, that is pretty special. And now, I was going to read you something that I have on my... Edith, would you bring me my phone? It's just sitting in the chair behind you. There's a reference I read to a book called The Little Book of Awakening by, What's his name? I've got it here, thank goodness. All I have to do is pull it up. Anyway, he's got a little reading for every day of the week, and the first chapter of it is really fitting for today's message. Oh, come on. It's called Burning the Wrapper. From the beginning, the key to renewal has been shedding the casting off of old skin, as a snake does. The Polynesians say the world began when Teora, their name for the Creator, woke to find himself growing inside a shell. He stretched and broke the shell, and the earth was created. Teora kept growing, though, and after a time found himself inside another shell. Again he stretched and broke the shell, and this time the moon was created. Again Teora kept growing, and again he found himself contained by yet another shell. This time the breaking forth created the stars. In this ancient story, the Polynesians have carried for us the wisdom that we each grow in this life by breaking successive shells, that the peace of God within each of us stretches until there's no room to be, and then the world as we know it must be broken so that we can be born anew. And that I just downloaded from Kindle this morning, The Little Book of Awakening by Mark Nemo. And it's, I only read you part of this week's chapter, but $9.99, and there's well, I only looked at the first chapter, so I can't tell you any more about it, but it's pretty fitting with the nature of today's message. So, whether we're snakes slewing off the skin that got too tight, or the creature breaking through the shell into a greater sense of being, I had that experience, and I broke through a stagnant shell that had been way too tight from the middle of February until the middle of July, late July. And if I can do it, you can do it. So if there's a place where your skin is fitting too tight or your shell has grown too small, it's time to break out of it. Write that song, start that book, sing as though nobody's listening, dance as though nobody's watching, and color outside the lines. It is time to break out and live fully. There's more to life than what I have been experiencing, and I don't think I'm the only one. Awake, thou that sleepest. I've got kind of an interesting quotation by Albert Schweitzer. He said, "The path of awakening is not about becoming who you are. It's about unbecoming who you are not." So what were you not created to be? Quiet, retiring, hiding your talent under what in the Bible it calls a bushel. You're created to break forth, to awaken into the wholeness of what you are. And what does the wholeness of what you are look like? It's different for each of us. To me, the awakening I have had this week says it's time to get out there. Put that new window in your house. Don't leave it for the next generation or the next buyer. Put the new window in the house. Make your house look the way you want it to look, for the way you want to live and to be. Yes, get rid of the clutter. Yes, buy the silk pillowcases that are kind to your skin and hair. It says so on Amazon. But it's to to be free. Again, I liken it to be free to jump in the puddle, to wear a yellow raincoat, to be free to dance and to sing, to learn to play the piano. Something I've always sort of wanted to do, but I've never done it. I could start now. I mean, starting at 83 is better than starting at 84, right? So that's really the message. I don't think I know, well, do I have another really great quotation here? Oh, the author of that book is Mark Nepo, not Mark Nemo. Finding Nemo. But Mark Nepo is the author of the book. Well, Raymond Charles Barker, we love Raymond Charles Barker. He's another of our great writers in our teaching. In The Power of Decision on page 140, my creativity is amazing. It renews and recreates my whole experience. I am a new person with a fresh mind living in an interesting world. Do you like it? So The Power of Decision, page 140. But I think that might be my favorite. And now I'll skip over all the notes that didn't come out of my mouth. And I will go back to, awake thou that sleepest. Return from the state of being frozen in time, in space, in life. And I can't tell you how to get there. You must inquire within. Last week, Reverend Joanne talked about contemplation and meditation. And if you want to get technical, in contemplation, you take one idea and contemplate it in the silence. Whereas in meditation, you just meditate not on a particular thing. But I don't care what we call it. If you go into the silence and ask for an idea that will help you to break through into greater livingness, you will get an answer. And so we'll finish with an affirmation. And the affirmation, and I'll read it once and then I'll read it in parts. Today I am an awake, aware, and acting center of consciousness. So if you'll repeat after me, today I am an awake, aware, and acting center of consciousness. Today, all together now, today I am an awake, aware, and acting center of consciousness, and so it is. And I'll ask Reverend Joanne to come and close the service. I'm not quite sure what she said, but